It is on cultural diplomacy for economic development. So there are lots of different angles how we can take cultural diplomacy, how we can define cultural diplomacy. And we did prepare something for everyone. I hope if you have it. If not, then Marina can give researchers today. We prepared something. Actually, Prayas, who is sitting back there, the very smart guy is helping us, and he's recently graduated from William and Mary. He put together a nice write-up on cultural diplomacy in Nepal. And Nepal has been known for cultural diplomacy in lots of different ways because of its art, culture, music, and also Nepalese are known to be laure, so they went, for generations they have been traveling, they went, for economic reasons. The Nepalese left Nepal, rural Nepal, they went to India, in army, or they went to British army, and that's how we are called laure. Right? So they could adjust anywhere, put them in any tough condition, they will survive, and they will do good. And so the cultural diplomacy has always been there. Right? So now, they went to the British Army hundreds of years ago, and still the issues are there, and they are trying to resolve. And so we thought, with Ambassador, the idea was that the growing population of Nepalese in US, very fast growing, very high number of artists. I think in per square feet, if we calculate, I think the Baltimore has probably more known Nepali artists than in Nepal in one location. And so we thought we should have on cultural diplomacy, and there are a couple angles that we have put together the program today. And so what we're going to do is the first panel. First panel is going to focus on challenges and opportunities on cultural diplomacy between Nepal and USA. And then we're going to switch to the second panel, and that will be art, culture, and diaspora. And the third panel is going to be our next generation. So we thought this is very important. So we added next generation, because we have our kids growing up here. And I know we have an honorable guest. Let's mention first, Honorable Ms. Komal Oli, Member of Parliament from Nepal. She traveled to Arjun yesterday. Good to have you to us.
Thank you.
And we have ambassadors, Dr. Arjun Karki, Ambassador DeLisi. We have our Councillor, Honorary Councillor Prem Radha Mahaji, our first Nepali Deputy Mayor in US, Kiran, Sitoula, Nepal Desk Officer, and Dr. Vishnu Porel. So if you talk to Nepali diaspora in Nepal, you have to place to Dr. Vishnu Porel and come down. And so we thought it's very interesting to have these young kids to come and say, because they're going to be our future cultural diplomat in this country. I think it's very high number. Their earning potential is going to be much higher than their parents. Their quality of life is going to be different, and they will be in mainstream. And without engaging them, I think it's very hard to talk about cultural diplomacy. And I talked to some of them, they're prepared, there will be a panel. And because legislator is here from Nepal, and here we talk about it, we're representing different organizations. We talk about NRN, they passed the NRN laws. But just my generation knows what this is. The next generation have no idea, and they are the biggest beneficiary of NRN laws. So where are we missing? And there are lots of Nepali organizations. What part we are missing that we are not able to engage these kids, these young generations, and if you look at their profile, some of them are in very high ranked positions in Nepal, US already, they're making a big impact, but we have not been able to engage them, and I think that's also another big challenge. So having said that, we have a panel, and we'll have a moderator for each session. So how we're going to format today is each of the panelists will speak for a few minutes, given how much the panel moderator allows, and then we'll open up for question answer. Moderator will moderate the question answer. Probably they are prepared already. They have prepared some questions. So for very first sessions, I will invite Mr. Kiran Sitoula to be a moderator for challenges and opportunities for cultural diplomacy between Nepal and USA. Okay. And we have a microphone there. You don't need to come to the podium. You can speak from there, however you feel comfortable. And I'll also request our panelists, Ambassador Mr. Scott DeLisi and Ambassador Dr. Arjun Karki. And just let you know if you get out here.
Oh, excellent.
On your right hand side, there's a ladies' room and a men's room if you need to use. Okay. And I'll also request our chief guest, Ms. Komaloli ji, to be on the dais, please. And we have a number of Nepali medias here, e-Nepalese and DC Nepal. I think they're also doing a live broadcast. I think that's okay with us, and it's okay with the panelists. And also I want to thank Embassy of Nepal for partnering on this, because without that, their partnership, it was not really possible. And it's a coincidence, or it's really our opportunity that a known artist from Nepal, who is a member of parliament, she happens to be in US, and she is participating and observing this whole session, and there'll be lots of lessons learned from both sides. So having said that, I will hand it over to Kiran Sitoula.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to IDI for making this event possible. First, I'd like to start off by recognizing the panelists and the special invited guest, Honorable Member of Parliament from Nepal, Ms. Komaloli, Your Excellency, Dr. Arjun Karki, Your Excellency, Retired Ambassador, Mr. Scott DeLisi. Thank you for your time this morning. When we talk about cultural diplomacy, I wouldn't want to go on a specific definition or something. We are from Nepal. We understand what it is, but still we want to make sure that what does the cultural diplomacy? It is such a vast subject. It is such a vast topic. So in essence, it includes the exchange of ideas, information, arts, language, and the other aspects of culture among nations and their people in order to foster mutual identity and understanding. So that is the essence of cultural diplomacy. So today specifically we are going to be focusing about the economic cultural diplomacy. When we look back at our own history in Nepal, if you recall that in order to avoid being gobbled up by, I believe at the time, the Tibetan kingdom, we married off one of our princess Vrikuti to Songtsen Gampo, I believe. That was our first time when we actually, Nepal initiated the known historical record of cultural diplomacy. And after that, all of you are aware of our export of Ornico to China. You know, the pagoda styles that you see in China, the Buddhism that explored out there on the Tibetan side, and these are some of the exports from Nepal that has served us well in times of peace and also in times of war. So without further ado, I would like to hear from our honorable panelists what it means for Nepal to enter into 21st century as a cultural diplomat. So what does it entail? What are some of the aspects that we should be careful about? What are some of the things that are serving us well, and what should we be focusing on? I believe are some of the answers that audience would be looking for. So I would like to request Honorable Ambassador Dr. Arjun Karki to give his opinion, not exceeding more than 10 minutes. I don't have one, I'm not going to time yourself, but I realize you always stick to your time. It is up to you. You pick your, how would you like to do?
Please.
Well, all right. Let's see what as you like. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. You know, Mr. Sitoula has framed a very broad question. Cultural diplomacy. Yeah, it's so multifaceted. And we talk about, oh yes, Nepal should engage in cultural diplomacy to advance economic development, to grow its partnerships in the world. And that's what this is all about, right? It's about building bridges. It's about establishing Nepal's identity. It's about building a set of relationships that compel people to want to engage Nepal, to make a difference for Nepal's future. That's easily said, but how do you do this? As a practitioner of diplomacy, of cultural diplomacy over many years, I came to recognize how tremendously important this was from the US side. We could talk all day long about our policies and our beliefs and our values and all the rest, but if people didn't feel it, if they didn't really understand it, and for many folks, these were just words. They say, oh, politicians. They think of diplomats as politicians. Politicians, you all say the same sort of thing. They listen to what a given president might say. Perhaps if they were listening to our current president, they'd have some very interesting perceptions of what the United States really was and what it meant. And could we have a partnership with them? But when we find a way to build a bridge that is truly presents the face of the American people, that presents our values and our core beliefs and our essence, then we begin to find that we have much in common. And this is the thing. Across cultures, we generally have so much that we share. We all want to build a better future for our families. We want our children to live in peace. We want our voices to be heard. We want to see that there's health care. We want all these good things. We have a very common understanding of the world, but we approach it from very different cultural biases and perspectives sometimes. So we need to find ways to break this down. You know, after the trauma of 9/11, one of the most effective things that we were able to do was to tell that story through pictures, through art. We had exhibitions and went around the world called Ground Zero. And it led people to think not just about the war on terror, but they looked at the humanity of this. They looked at the human cost. They understood that these were real people. That when we spoke about this wasn't about some abstract policy issue, but it was about something that had touched all of our lives deeply and had changed our society. That's part of cultural diplomacy. When we engage young people, when we sit with youth in these countries, and we talk to them about our values, about the things that matter, when they come to your home, and when we have in our homes as ambassadors, we have art from America, and we're able to talk about what that art means and how it resonates. And we ask them how they perceive it and how this relates to their own culture. Suddenly you say, oh, we've got some things in common. When we brought the jazz ambassadors, we used to do Jazz Mandu every year. It was a huge event. People loved it. And Prem, you know the importance of music as a tool for cultural diplomacy. Suddenly people came and they saw us and they saw our role differently. And they talked to me not just as an ambassador, not just as His Excellency, but about, oh my God, wasn't that drummer fantastic? And you build relationships. When I would travel in Nepal, and I would post pictures on Facebook, pictures that told a story about my own engagement with Nepal. That's part of cultural diplomacy as well. And suddenly people said, you know what? This ambassador actually cares about Nepal. He likes our country. And it made it easier for me to then engage. Now what for Nepal? As Nepal seeks to engage the world, what are you selling? Why should people care? Why should they be involved in Nepal's economic development or anything else? You are not a huge geopolitical strategic player. You matter, but so do a lot of other countries. Why should we care? You don't have tremendous wealth to offer the rest of the world. Why should people care? We don't come to Nepal to get your resources. We don't come to Nepal to help us counter the Russians or to deal with global terrorism. So we have to find that basis for engagement, and Nepal has to be able to sell this. And this, what you have to sell, one of your greatest assets, is the culture. It's the people. It's conveying to the rest of the world that face of who and what Nepal is. That is why When I was a Nepal desk officer, and Alexis, I don't know if it's still true today, when I was a Nepal desk officer, I used to get calls all the time from people who'd say, I'd answer the phone, I'd go, Nepal desk, and they'd say, hey, dude. I'd go, hey. And it would be some Peace Corps volunteer that had served in Nepal 20 years before, and they'd say, I'm just calling to see, is the country still cool? I'd say, it's still very cool. And they'd say, that's so good, because they cared about Nepal. There's a richness to the culture, a decency, a vibrancy, a tolerance, a compassion, so many things that define this nation, that touch us and that touch Americans deeply. And if you can convey that, if you can sell that, it gives people a reason to care, a reason to want to engage in Nepal. But if you're going to do this, again, it's not enough to just say, oh, cultural diplomacy. We're going to do cultural diplomacy. Again, there's 100 different dimensions to that. All of you can do this individually. Prem, I know you do this all the time with your food and your music and your engagement. You are a tremendous ambassador for Nepal, and you tell Nepal's story, and people are captured by this. This is why you've got these great friends in Fredericksburg, Virginia, who want to continue to be part of building the future with Nepal. And we can all do this individually, but what I value is that Ambassador Karki is looking at this in a broader sense. And as an ambassador, if you can ask yourself, how do we incorporate cultural engagement and cultural diplomacy throughout the full array of the things that we do? And it has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen. But if you say, every program, every activity, where is that dimension that allows us to begin to build a cultural partnership, to build awareness, to build that sense of who we are, and to share this with our audience? That's where you begin. It requires a lot of thought. It requires a constant reevaluation of the effectiveness of your programs, how it requires that you deliver that message to your entire staff within your mission, to your government at home, and to your community. And to ask each and every one of you who cares about Nepal to think about how you can be part of this effort to build this base of support for Nepal in America. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. But I'm going to stop right there for the moment, and happy to answer questions later, but I probably have done 10 minutes, and I want to turn it over to whoever Mr. Sitoula thinks should come next.
Thank you. I think you did really fantastic. Now onwards to His Excellency, Dr. Karki.
Okay. Honorable Komaroli. So again, it is a great pleasure to attend this panel discussion regarding cultural diplomacy between US and Nepal. Thank you, Suman-idi and International Development Institute for collaborating with Embassy of Nepal to organize this event on cultural diplomacy for economic development in Nepal. Friends, Nepal takes a great pride on our multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multilingual composition, and our ability to maintain the unity, not despite our diversity, but because of our diversity. Our diverse population has created a beautiful fusion of culture, resulting in unique art, music, traditional dances, and exquisite cuisine. These aspects of Nepali culture are the critical indicative within the prospect of cultural diplomacy to many of us. In today's world of technology and social media, diplomatic relationship between countries is not limited to what diplomats like us do within our job description. The different subsets of diplomacy have been expanded more than ever in today's age. Nowadays, the recognition and appreciation of culture and lifestyle between two different countries starts from social media and travel experiences through the picture of beautiful landscapes, the vibrant festivals, and delicious cuisine. After the establishment of first diplomatic relationship of the United States and Nepal in 1947, today, 71 years later, this effort to establish the relationship where the population of two countries create a connection through shared interest and values has been easier and more critical than ever. As I mentioned, one of the reasons is the growth of social media and internet use in our countries too. While another and most important reason is the fact that we have representative in each other countries. Today there are more than 300,000 Nepali population residing all over the United States. That is why wherever I go around the United States, I always like to say that I am temporary ambassador and Nepalese residing here in the United States are permanent ambassador of Nepal to the United States. Non-resident Nepalis are very instrumental in promoting the cultural diplomacy and people-to-people diplomacy, in fact, between two countries. There are many Nepalese here. We have opened amazing, authentic Nepali restaurants, art galleries, music and dance training centers here in the United States, further sharing the Nepali culture in American societies. When the NRN live here in harmony with the local population and visit Nepal, they convey the message of friendship between the nations. The fluency of both Nepali and English language within the Nepali population residing here is also one of the important means to promote peoples-to-people diplomacy. Similarly, the tourists from United States visiting Nepal, as Ambassador DeLisi mentioned, American Peace Corps and study exchange students are all valuable in promoting cultural diplomacy between the US and Nepal. Here we have today our former US Ambassador to Nepal, DeLisi. He is not only a government official, as he mentioned earlier. He is also a cultural diplomat in many sense for many of us who managed to maintain valuable relationship with Nepal and Nepali people even after the tenure expiration of his official posting. In fact, I am invited to attend so many Nepalese events all over the United States, and due to the limitation of time that I have, and in many occasions, in fact, I found Ambassador DeLisi attended more Nepalese events than I was able to attend. So sometimes I joke about it and I tell this to Ambassador DeLisi that he is helping me to do my job as well in many sense. So that's why we considered him. He was Nepal ambassador to US ambassador to Nepal in the past, but now, though not officially, Nepal ambassador to the United States. So yeah, he's very popular among the Nepali diaspora, not only here, but also all over the world. People remember him because he was in Nepal in a very critical and politically sensitive time. He had contributed a lot in restoring peace and democracy in our country. So the kind of job after retirement people like Ambassador DeLisi do in their respective country is job of cultural diplomat. This is what we are trying to say basically this morning. The government of Nepal and Ministry of Foreign Affairs have made significant effort with the help of Embassy of Nepal to promote cultural diplomacy between two countries. The effort includes support for Nepali artists and the collaboration with different non-residential groups to organize events that assist with the promotion of Nepali culture. Similarly, Nepali diaspora in the United States have continued to receive notable support from the government of United States for the promotion of cultural diplomacy and has made positive impact in fostering positive relationship between two countries. Today, I would like to appeal to my Nepali brother and sister here in the United States to preserve our culture and language among future generations, to maintain this alliance of cultural appreciation despite the differences for a long time among Nepal and US. Similarly, I would like to appeal Nepali youth residing here in US to function as a tie in between two countries and promote the diplomatic relationship through cultural exchanges. Dear friend, United States welcomes 10th largest number of students from Nepal. Likewise, Nepal also sends large number of bright minds in the field of medicine, mathematics, chemistry, physics, engineering, and other technological work for the United States. Not only students. We are 10th largest student sending country to the United States. So they are our cultural ambassadors. Correspondingly, Nepal received $156 million in fiscal year 2017 as US aid to Nepal, and $500 million from Millennium Challenge Corporation. Nepal also received one of the largest private sector donations from the United States. US has functioned as a key helping hand throughout the history towards the establishment of peaceful democratic nation and towards the economic development of Nepal for a long time. Let's all hope and make effort to continue this relationship to last long and harmonious in future. Last but not least, I thank Honorable Member of Parliament Komal Oli for accepting our invitation. Aside being a Parliament member, Honorable Member of Parliament Komal Oli is also a renowned artist who has recorded more than 780 songs and published more than 3 dozen of music albums. She has made a huge contribution on promoting Nepali culture through beautiful Nepali folk song throughout her career. Ms. Oli, it is very encouraging to have you here in the United States.
Thank you.
And your presence in this particular event. Thank you very much for your valuable time.
Thank you.
And also thank you all for attending this very important event this morning. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Ambassador. Now on to question and answer sessions. You've heard the esteemed guests here speak about the culture diplomacy. If you have any questions, I think it would be best if you wouldn't mind going up there and asking your questions, so that I think for those who are recording, your voice and questions are clear enough. So please. Yep. Yeah, please state your name for the record so that we can recognize you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Is it on? My name is Lakshmi Vilas Acharya. I just have one small, not a question, but a thought. When you talk about the cultural diplomacy for economic development, I think, as we discussed in a wide length, the role of culture, the music and all these things. But I think the culture we have to transfer from such countries to our country, the culture of good governance also. That is the main obstacle up to now we are facing in Nepal, which has been hampering our growth in a significant way. So I think it will be better to have some thoughts in this view also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Acharya. Feel free to just line up over there if you have a question so that we can make it more efficient.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Purna Singh Baraili. I'm president of Nepal America Film Society. We've been organizing Nepal America International Film Festival since 2017. And thank you for organizing this important event, panel discussion. I would like to ask one question here, both of the ambassadors. What kind of role can cinema play for the cultural diplomacy? So how can you work in Nepalese diaspora in America? Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Karki. Would you please respond?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Prakash.
Just a second. Let him answer. Let's hold on.
Oh, so you
Karki
answer and
responding.
then ask up.
Thank you very much. It's really very pertinent remarks and questions. Let me start from culture of good governance. In fact, there is no doubt about it. It has to be valued, respected, and in fact, with the support of our good friendly countries and also spirit of democratic spirit and culture of Nepali social movement, political parties and Democrats, we have made significant progress on good governance as well. We are here today from the era of Rana family regime, which was lasted for 104 years. We have 36-year long panchayati party-less system. We suffered from all those political upheavals. We had conflict and war. Have relatively stable political situation in our country. In last 74 years, we had 54 governments. This is my beginning of 4th year as ambassador to President. And I'm serving 5th Prime Minister and 5th Foreign Minister in less than 4 years' time. So we have gone through such a terrible political instability and upheavals, if you like. So if you have a situation of political instability, conflict, war, our desire for good governance is always high, but it is difficult to achieve. But after the new promulgation of new constitution, after the recently held election, and also government of two-thirds majority, we have started major reform in the area of governance, and we all agree that we can succeed in this area. But we have a desire of seeing every single changes today. We don't have patience, and it is a human thing. So it takes time. We have gone through such a difficult political terrain and upheavals, but I strongly feel that we are making good progress, and there are so many areas of avenues that we still need to improve. Thank you very much. The other question about Nepali Film Festival and its role, cinema's role in cultural diplomacy. I am not really an expert in this area, but as I have mentioned in my statement, every single art and culture, no matter whether it is cinema, song, video footage, photographs, pictures, arts, have a big role to really play in terms of not only cultural diplomacy per se, but also to really support, mobilize significant economic cooperation to a country like ours. For example, if you are able to impress our US citizen brother and sister by our art, by our culture, by beautiful picture of a Himalaya or a mountain, or songs, arts, artifacts, that will really attract their attention to a small country like Nepal. So it has significant value, and I really admire the kind of initiative you are taking in order to really establish a very good contact relations with US citizen. And in fact, we have now significant number of US citizen of Nepali descent, and it has really further enhanced the value of Nepali art, culture, movie, cinema, song, and arts and other artifacts. Thank you very much.
Master DeLisi.
Let me turn first to this question of the culture of accountability. There's nothing that could be more important than for young Nepalis and for Nepali Americans, those who have come to see a different way of engaging the world, perhaps, to be able to carry back to Nepal that message of accountability, transparency, of business professionalism, of doing things a bit differently. If Nepal is going to compete effectively in today's world, in a world that is changing ever more quickly all the time, they need to understand what the business and society and economic cultures demand. And I think there is a need for these changes. I saw corruption and impediments to good governance as one of the greatest challenges when I was in Nepal. I believe that this is something that people are working at. I saw young people who were committed to it, but they would say to me, they'd say, "Excellency, what can you do to change this?" I said, "No, don't ask me. It's your country. It is you that has to bring about these cultural changes," but you're right, that is a cultural change as well, and it is an important one for Nepal's future, and I hope that the models that you can offer, the experiences that many in the Nepali diaspora community have had, can be translated back in Nepal, but you have to be willing to carry it back and to talk about this and to help bring about these shifts. So I hope that you'll do that. In terms of film, I got to commend the Film Institute. I was at some of your films in the past. White Sun. Why isn't that the White Sun was a fantastic film. It was powerful. It made me think a little bit differently about the impact of a very difficult period in Nepali society on the people, on families, on men, on women, on roles, on gender identity, on all of these things. That was a film that would transform the way the average American might think about Nepal. Just as this Hollywood has been one of our best tools and also most harmful tools at times in creating perceptions of America. But look at a film like Black Panther. What does that say to people about African Americans, how we might see this, about how we perceive Africa? It's a very different message than maybe is being delivered again by some in our country today. But film has got so much potential to shift dramatically attitudes and understanding. If you can continue that effort to share Nepali film, good Nepali film, with the American people, and to broaden their understanding and to bring it more and more into the mainstream and to get young Nepalis to watch it as well, I think that you're going to be moving very much in the right direction.
Thank you. It also reminds me that a long time ago, a Chinese scholar said with regards to the movies that, hey, we watch so many Hollywood movies, it's all about lots of wedding, lots of funerals, and they go to court all the time. You know? So, and this was very interesting because his implication was that China needs to go to court more often. That shows that they're going to be practicing more democratic norms, which is going to be good for China, and we wanted China to open up in that way. So it does have a very significant impact, especially the movies, and it goes both ways. With regards to the first question of good governance, one of the in May, as a matter of fact, U.S. Embassy through efforts from University of Maryland, is launching a course in Nepal to help elected officials as a part of the good governance that requires, especially it's only focused on local elected officials. It has multiple modules on effective governance, transparency, budgeting, legal frameworks. So that is actually going to be made available starting in May. And prior to May, we are hoping we can set up something similar to this event to give you a preview of what it is like, and it is fascinating. And that was part of a cultural diplomacy. I was able to participate because when I became vice mayor in Indian Head, and I soaked in all that knowledge, then I talked to the then ambassador and said, "What can I do?" And he said, "Okay, write up a proposal. Let's see what we can do." And State Department sponsored it, and we did we went to Nepal, did a research, found out, did a gap analysis, what they needed, and that is actually, and the University of Maryland is going to be launching that product very soon. As a matter of fact, it just got finalized yesterday. US Embassy is going to start reviewing the product all of rest of the month, and then we're going to be working through that. So things are happening. A young lady, you've been waiting there standing for a long time. Would you like to ask a question, or I think Mr. Nepal, you're next.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Dr. Arjun Karki had just mentioned that we are Nepal is the 10th largest country to send students to the US. My question is, do you have any statistics? How many students go back to Nepal and contribute to the development? That's one question. And just for your information, I work for the federal government, Department of Treasury. Every month, twice of every month, 2 times a month, excuse me, we have different, we call the vendor show. So if you're involved in some kind of Nepal products, you can bring in, you can sell them there. So feel free to contact me if you have that, if you're involved in that kind of business. So that will promote some of our Nepali products. Kiranji and myself, you can reach both of us, we work in the same department. So with this, thank you very much.
Dr. Karki, any information on the numbers?
No. Oh no, we don't have the authentic number, but as you all know, many returns from birth. They are doing, we have a two-way traffic here in our relationship. We have large number of US trained experts and government officials performing very good duties in Nepal. At the same time, as I mentioned in my statement, we have large number of doctors, engineers, academicians who teach in this country most difficult subject many people think of, physics, chemistry, and various aspects of agricultural science. So we are also importing brain from Nepal to the United States, and that is our contribution to the US economy and academia. Yeah, of course, there are some students, they have decided to stay, continue, and US government decided to employ them in relevant areas of job here, and I don't really mind to see that's happening, because in a era of globalization, we are living in a global village, so large number of Nepali, those who are living in this country, they are, many of them are US citizens, but they still, the beauty with this is they still love Nepal. They value Nepali culture. And sometimes they also really love Nepali politics more than, sometimes I think they are supposed to be loving. So yeah, there are both sides of coin.
Yep.
But I think we have a high brand Nepali community in this country, and they love Nepal so much.
I think, Dr. Karki, just to add to that, some of the most notable recent returnees has been Dr. Swarnim Wagle, who has gone back and served as the chair of the
There
National
are
Planning
many.
Commission.
There are many.
Yeah,
There are
exactly.
many.
And then Dr. Pukar Malla and Susma Shrestha, a lot of things. But the trend is increasing. That is a good news. Is that the trend of diffusion towards Nepal is increasing, and there are social medias that are also encouraging the most recent graduates to consider going back to Nepal, and that is a positive thought.
Yeah, but whether they go back or not. And of course, when we issue visas, we always assume that you're going to go back, right? Now, that's always the presumption going in.
Yeah.
But whether they do or not, these academic exchanges are some of the most important things that we can do to build the bonds between our nations. And in a world where, again, knowledge is power, and where it is changing so rapidly, if we deny these opportunities, we're all going to miss the boat. And we've seen through our own programs, through our Fulbright exchanges, which have been wonderful programs, and oftentimes some of the leaders, some of the young people we have sent from Nepal or any other country to the United States, they end up going home. They become prime ministers, they become attorneys general, they become judges, they become Nobel Peace Prize winners. It's these partnerships, getting to know each other in this way matters. And for those young people who do choose to stay in America, that doesn't mean that they will not go back sometime later, that they will not be able to take their learning and the cultures that they've experienced, cultures of accountability and all the rest, and translate that back to Nepal. We don't want to see brain drain, but I think it is a mutually beneficial engagement, and we make it work. And I think it's been good for both countries.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, Mr. Premchandra, this should be the last question. You want to ask?
Yeah,
Okay. And then yeah.
Good morning, panel members, and good morning, distinguished guests. I actually have a small comment and question for former Ambassador DeLisi.
Your name, please.
Oh, my name is Izurigmi. Yeah. So it's a really great coincidence that 8 years ago, DeLisi, I don't think you remember, you went to this school in southern Lalitpur called Jyotidhar Cooperative School, and I actually welcomed you on the inauguration of our school. And I remember after that, you had another event in the southern rural Lalitpur place. So I have had this great experience of you really getting involved in cultural diplomacy back home. And it's a really great coincidence to be here and see you again after 8 years. So that's the comment. And I have a question, do you still have any communication or connection to those schools you were really involved in while you're back in your tenure there? Do you have any other communication with new schools and helping them with any other experiences of yours?
Thank you. I do remember inaugurating the schools. And I can still remember walking along, and when they ran out of, when there was no more space for garlands, then they started throwing the marigolds. And marigolds can hurt. I'm just a word of advice. A pitched marigold that hits you in the wrong spot, that can cause permanent damage. But I do remember it was a wonderful experience, and to be part of the community, that mattered. I don't have an ongoing connection to that particular school. But as many of you know, I still remain as the ambassador said, I remain engaged in Nepal. Why? Because the people of Nepal touched my heart. This is one of the most powerful things that you have, the culture, the people telling that story. There's a lot of places where I could spend my time, a lot of things that I can do now as an old retired ambassador. But the opportunity to remain engaged in the world matters. And for me, the chance to be engaged in Nepal and to make some difference. And yes, so I work through IDI, through my partners, through Suman and Parashu, through many others. We are doing work with schools. We're doing work with women's empowerment. We are doing work with children who are in need. We're doing work with the Nepal Ambulance Service. All of it's about making a difference. It's about building the future. So yes, the work that we do through the Soarway Foundation has an element of economic impact, we hope, and cultural and development. But it's driven by a commitment, by a cultural engagement that endures. And you and your classmates at that school were part of it that touched my heart. So thank you. Nice to see you.
Namaste everybody, my name is Prem Sandola. Listening all these thoughts, I'm just thinking something little bit odd is how we can initiate our cultural diplomacy in a way that we can attract more experienced professionals to Nepal from US or any other advanced countries. We are talking more about those Nepalese who are here and all professionals, this and that and all those things. But the other way around, are we thinking about that? Or how we can attract? I think that is another challenge to maintain a two-way cultural diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we real quick have two gentlemen ask their questions and I will allow them to respond so that we can just go ahead, sir. State your name, please.
Namaskar.
Okay.
Malcolm Odell, Mac Odell, Peace Corps 1, Nepal 1962 to 67. Makalu Baran and the Kali Gandaki, 1994 to 2003, 13 years in Nepal.
I come from Makalu Baran.
First of all, I want to acknowledge Nepal. Nepal, I lived there 13 years. Nepal is truly one of the greatest countries in the entire world. I say that for several reasons. It's an amazing country, the mountains and everybody knows the people, the wonderful people, everything like that. But not many people know that Nepal is probably one of the world's leading countries in climate change control. You rescued your forests in the lowlands from malaria eradication, clear cutting. Satellite imagery will show that the forests have reborn in the Himalayas with the community forestry program, which is a world model. Nobody can touch that model. Your wildlife is incredible, the parks. You're one of the very few countries where wildlife numbers, endangered wildlife numbers are actually increasing, and it's because of an incredible community participation approach where you engage the local people. You're adding to the wildlife. And you've done everything you can to protect the glaciers that we in the West are eroding every day. So I have to acknowledge that the same thing. You also are a world leader in the use of appreciative inquiry, positive inquiry into what works, what's even better look like, and how to get there. Focusing on the successes rather than the problems. Those things made the most successful women's empowerment project in the entire world. It's called Worth. It started in Nepal. There's nothing that comes close, and the Worth women are still carrying on 20 years later. So I have to acknowledge you for all that. Apologies. I have two questions and a possible third. First of all, we've all read the tragedy of the girl from Kathmandu, the Nepalese that were slaughtered by the ISIS. In the world, you gave the lives of Nepalis to the war in Iraq, and they were murdered, on live television, and I just want to ask: is the compensation? The case has gone on. Is there proper compensation been allowed from this government, which was responsible for those deaths? Is that compensation been realized for those families that were actually involved? The number two question is, Nepali, there's how many thousand Nepali asylum who came under asylum after the earthquakes, and now this administration, which is an embarrassment to the world, is trying to send them back. Is there any resolution to making sure that those people are not forced to go back if they don't want to? those two questions. And afterwards, I'd like to talk to anybody interested about a new project. Rotary, Fulbright, Great Himalayan Trail, creating a community participation strategy for the 500-mile community Great Himalayan Trail, which would be another world amazing thing if we can pull it off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rakesh. I run a small travel agency in this metro. First of all, I would like to show my respect to Ambassador Scott DeLisi for doing everything to Nepal and the Shore Foundation. And my question is to Ms. Komaloli. With the recent bill, which is presented to Parliament, posting against government on restricting in social media. So since 2020 being the Visit Nepal year, and with this restriction on freedom of speech, won't it affect everything, on different aspects? So thank you.
Thank you. So I think, would you like to pick an order on who will respond first? First, the question from Mr. Prem Sangrala was the qualified, attracting qualified people from here back home. I think Dr. Karki, would you like to respond to that, please?
Premji, thank you very much. This question was in fact very encouraging for us. And in fact, we have talked about various facets of cultural diplomacy this morning, but the whole purpose of this discussion is to economic development of Nepal. So there are different ways of making intervention in the area of economic development. And one of the area is also sending back our experts from the United States. That is one. So as Kiranji mentioned earlier, there are trained already. In fact, not only our policymakers and also expert in some areas of socio-economic development in Nepal, but also in our political life. We have very senior politicians who are trained here as Fulbright scholarship program. They are in the mainstream politics. So, but we have started to see some changes there. But the one main thing I want to really share with you this morning is also to think about, in a changed political context, how can we really send more number of tourists from this country as a part of our cultural relation and cultural ties with the US societies. So we have Visit Nepal program 2020. So we want to really double the number of tourists, US tourists in Nepal, which is now third largest, after China and India, US is the third largest tourist sending country to Nepal. We are 10th largest student bringing country and third largest tourist sending country. So we want to double that by 2020. So we have a role to play in that. So spreading good message about Nepal and US society. Similarly, we are going to convene Nepal Investment Summit at the end of March. So if you know friends, if you have contacts, you encourage them to attend this so that they can hear from horse's mouth about what are the changes are taking place in various aspects of socio-economic development of Nepal and what are the changes and challenges that we are facing in order to address the rampant poverty, political instability, and related legal reform. So you have a role to play. Thank you.
Thank you. So would you have any response to the compensation for the victims in Iraq and as well as the asylum cases?
In fact,
for MAC.
To be very frank and honest with you, I don't have that information.
Okay. I do see Niranjan over there. Would you have answers to those cases? He's a lawyer.
There was a private lawsuit filed. I think they won the case, but not from the government side. It was the contractor. I think they paid a large sum of money as a compensation, but I think the case is still ongoing.
Would you have anything with regards to the TPS?
TPS, right now there's a lawsuit filed in Ninth Circuit, I believe, or in DC Court in California to stay the repeal. We don't know much other than that. There's a lawsuit by other countries, but Nepal and Honduras filed a joint case in California, so we'll see what happens to that case in District Court.
Thank you, Niranjan. So, last but not the least, I would like to request Honorable. Okay.
One point of information. In fact, yeah, the TPS, they are not refugees. In fact, they were not seeking asylum, but they are basically seeking support of U.S. government so that they are allowed to legally stay in this country. That was basically one of the things that I persuaded. The very first task of my ambassadorship in this country, I have spoken to, in fact, on the 7th day of my arrival, I had an opportunity to speak to President Obama. So he had taken it very positively, gave me some guidance and support. And also Secretary Kerry at the time, I met him in the first day of my official work here as an ambassador. I had an opportunity to speak to Secretary Kerry as well. So that was basically a support to Nepali citizen so that they can stay here for certain given number of years and also support their family. So they were not refugees in fact. That's why it was called temporary protected status. Some of our diaspora communities, support group, right groups are working on this issue. The other thing, the Honorable Member of Parliament wanted me to explain about the social media issue. Rakeshji was trying to say, I think this information is very misleading. We are not, Government of Nepal is not asking, not restricting social media, but we are asking, as it is in other countries, we are asking social media organization, companies to legally register and function. For example, तपाईलाई के भन्नु भने भारतमा चाहिँ नि फेसबुकले ट्विटरले जब दर्ता हुन्छ त्यहाँको इन्कमहरुले रजिस्टर गर्छ ट्याक्स तिर्छ र कमाएको नाफा लिएर आउँछ तर हाम्रो देशमा अहिलेसम्म के रहेछ भने छैन रहेछ सबै त्यतिकै छ भने त्यहाँबाट धेरै रेभेन्यूहरु आउँछ तर त्यो रेभेन्यू चाहिँ के छ भने देखिन चाहिँ नि कर नतिरिकन फर्केर आउँछ तर त्यो अरु कुनै पनि देशमा पोसिबल छैन त्यो यहाँ पनि अमेरिकामा पनि त्यो सिस्टम छ अहिले हामीले एकैचोटी भन्दाखेरि यो चाहिँ रेस्ट्रिक्सन गर्न लाग्यो के गर्न लाग्यो भन्ने मेसेजहरु आएछ व्हिच इज नट ट्रू बेसिकली अहिले के भन्छ त्यो सबै अर्गनाइजहरु चाहिँ सोशल मिडिया प्लेटफर्म्सहरु चाहिँ हाम्रो चाहिँ लफुल्ली दे आर आस्क्ड टु रजिस्टर फंक्सन अनि उनीहरुले केही इन्कम गर्यो भने त्यो ट्याक्स पनि तिर्नु पर्यो उनीहरुले कमाएको प्रोफिटमा ट्याक्स पनि तिर्नु पर्यो र त्यो चाहिँ हामीले मात्रै गर्न खोजेको हाम्रोमा चाहिँ केही व्यवस्थै थिएन हामीले त्यहाँतिर ध्यानै गएको थिएन पहिला द्याट्स व्हाई वी आर नट टकिङ अबाउट द्याट अनि अहिले भएको के रेस्ट्रिक्सन हुन लाग्यो भने देयर इज नथिङ लाइक द्याट त्यस्तो कुनै छैन खाली के हुनुपर्छ भनेदेखि त्यसलाई भोलि कसैले कहाँनेर चाहिँ सोशल मिडिया प्लेटफर्म युज गरेर क्रिमिनल एक्टहरु गर्यो अरु विभिन्न कामहरु गर्यो भनेदेखि चाहिँ नि रजिस्टर गर्यो भने इट्स नट ओन्ली रेभेन्यू एन्ड ट्याक्सेस बट अल्सो इफ anything, okay, terrorism or illegal criminal act भयो भने त्यसले ट्र्याक डाउन गर्न पनि सजिलो हुन्छ भन्ने हिसाबले गरेको यसमा अलिकति बुझाइको कमी भएको मात्रै हो थ्यांक यू भेरी मच
किरण जी यो राकेशजीको म जोड्न मात्रै चाहे प्रवक्ताजीले सरकार नेपाल सरकारको प्रवक्ताबाट हिजो नै यो जानकारी गराइसक्नु छ यो कुरा हुँदै हैन यसरी नबुझिदिनु होला भनेको जानकारी जो पाइसकेको थप्दैको मात्रै
Thank you. I'd like to conclude this session. Please give a round of applause to honorable ambassadors.